The rotor wash had barely faded when Avery's boots came to a full halt on the edge of the patio stones, the solace leaving faint prints of dust and hydraulic residue on Rachel's immaculate outdoor flooring. Her gaze swept the scene with the quiet, methodical assessment of someone who had spent years stepping into unsecured terrain. Just a single controlled inhale through the nose, chest rising only a fraction beneath the rigid line of her dress blues. Rachel's smile twitched. A tiny spasm at the corner of her mouth, barely a millimeter, but unmistakable to someone trained to read micro-expressions under NVGs and red light conditions. Avery caught it immediately. She always had. A group of former classmates, half-buzzed on afternoon Prosecco, shifted behind Rachel like a poorly disciplined formation. Shoulders tightened, a throat cleared too quickly. Someone's hand trembled against the stem of a champagne flute, the crystal chiming softly against the rim, an unintentional tell. Avery didn't break eye contact. She stood with parade dress precision, feet shoulder width, hands clasped behind her back, chin level. Not a single motion extraneous. Her jaw flexed once, a tiny click, the only sign the moment meant anything personal at all. Years of but-s conditioning had ground her emotional output into a series of calculated, nearly silent physiological cues. Rachel's eyes flicked to Avery's collar again, to the silver oak leaf gleaming in the sunlight. Commander, not lieutenant. Not some vague, enlisted rank she could privately diminish. A field-grade officer. A woman operating at the upper strata of the most elite maritime special operations unit in the world. Jennifer swallowed hard. Her glossed lips parted in an involuntary micro-breath, the kind people take when their brain is trying to reconcile past and present. She walked like that in high school. Someone whispered behind her. No, Jennifer murmured. She didn't walk like that at all. Avery scanned the crowd for less than a second. Faces she remembered, faces she didn't, faces she had once avoided in hallways lined with lockers that slammed shut behind her like steel traps. Her gaze finally returned to Rachel, locking onto her with quiet precision. The hostess attempted a laugh. It came out thin, a beat too sharp, betraying the adrenaline spike flushing her system. Avery caught the tremor in her fingers as she tucked hair behind her ear, an unconscious self-soothing gesture. Well, Rachel said again, voice tightening, you certainly made an entrance. Avery's eyes flicked upward briefly, as though acknowledging the route of insertion. LZ secure, exfil on standby. Standard. Your address wasn't exactly subtle, she replied, tone even. Clit. We were already airborne for a meeting in Norfolk. I requested a deviation off flight path. A couple of guests exchanged looks, half impressed, half unnerved. Nobody asked how she had clearance to commandeer a Black Hawk for a social event. The implication hung in the air. She operated in a world where such things were possible. Rachel took a step forward, heels clicking too loudly on the stone. She stopped just shy of Avery's reach, though she didn't seem aware of the instinctive distance she kept, something primal in the body recognizing threat even when the mind denied it. So, Rachel said, voice pitched too high, you work with helicopters now. Avery blinked once, slowly. I work, she said, with people who fly them. The distinction settled like a blade. Brad shifted uncomfortably, his shoulders tightening as if bracing for incoming fire. He stared at Avery with the dawning realization of a man who had spent his life believing himself impressive until someone genuinely impressive walked into the room. Avery didn't look at him. Her attention remained fixed on Rachel, studying her micro-movements with the same quiet precision she might use while interrogating a detainee. No aggression, no escalation. Just observation. Rachel's breathing hitched for half a second, barely perceptible, but Avery heard it. She always heard it. The champagne glass in Rachel's hand tilted, liquid rippling against crystal walls. Avery finally spoke again, voice quieter this time, almost gentle. I came because you asked. For the first time, Rachel's mask slipped just a flicker, a flash of something raw and involuntary behind her eyes. Guilt, fear, memory. Avery couldn't tell. Or maybe she could, and chose not to show it. The gathering stood suspended in a strange stillness, the last echoes of rotor blades fading somewhere over the tree line. Avery waited. Rachel's kitchen lights reflected off the polished marble like operating room fluorescence gold, unforgiving, revealing every hairline fracture beneath her curated calm. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the countertop, the tendons in her wrist rising like cables under strain. Through the glass doors, Avery stood in the center of the lawn, and the crowd orbited her with the gravitational pull of a new center of power. Someone snapped a photo, bright, quick. A reflexive documentation of proximity to someone who lived in classified spaces. The kind of person civilians only understood through documentaries and Pentagon briefings. Avery didn't pose. She simply existed, posture snapped into a natural command presence, the kind that couldn't be faked. Rachel felt her jaw click as she ground her molars together. Derek stepped up beside her, adjusting the cuff of his designer shirt. The gleam of his Kodak caught a shard of light that briefly flashed across Rachel's eyes, making her blink. "You good?" he murmured, voice tentative. Not concerned strategic, Derek didn't do emotional support. He assessed liability. Rachel didn't turn to him. "Fine." The consonants hit the air sharp, clit. Her lips held a smile that didn't move her cheeks. She had spent half a year engineering this night, with the precision of a courtroom performance. Guest list, lighting, curated playlists, floral arrangements designed to trigger nostalgia and envy in equal measure. The reunion games were supposed to seal her dominance in an auditorium where she could resurrect the old hierarchy and recrown herself queen. But outside, the hierarchy had shifted, tilted, and she wasn't at the top anymore. Her gaze tracked Avery as the commander demonstrated something to Brad, hands moving in tight, controlled motions. The straight-line efficiency of someone trained to communicate under night vision, under fire, under conditions where wasted motion could mean casualties. Brad leaned forward, eyes sharp with focus he had never once given Rachel in all their teenage years. His mouth parted in an involuntary microreaction of awe, the kind that burned Rachel's chest like acid reflux. "She's exaggerating," Rachel muttered. Derek lifted a brow. "Why would she exaggerate?" "Because women can't be seals," Rachel said, voice too loud, too fast, a tell. Derek's phone slid from his pocket with a soft scrape against the countertop. His thumb moved with practiced speed. Scanning, he stopped, his eyes flicked upward. "It's legit," he said, "fully integrated now. She outranks most of the officers I've met." Rachel's throat tightened. The wine in her glass sloshed slightly as her fingers trembled, the movement microscopic but present. She steadied it, inhaled, and forced her face into hostess mode. She stepped out to the lawn. Each click of her heels landed like attempts to reclaim territory. Conversations shifted around her, volume dropping half a decibel as she approached. Avery turned slightly, acknowledging her presence without deferring to it. Rachel smiled, a perfect social smile with no heat behind it. "Avery," she said, extending a hand she didn't actually want touched. "We're about to start the reunion games." Avery didn't take the hand, she let it fall. Not rudely, simply not on Rachel's terms. Rachel pushed forward. "Remember the superlatives. Most likely to succeed, most changed." Her eyes flicked over Avery's uniform like a weapon she could not disarm. "And I'm sure everyone's curious," she said, gesturing to the crowd that no longer felt like hers, "about your journey. From then to now." Avery's blinking rate slowed. A sign of controlled emotional regulation. Her shoulders squared a millimeter, or a posture shift imperceptible to most, but not to Rachel. "Not now. Not with the stakes this high." "Of course," Avery said. She set her champagne on the table, untouched, a deliberate act. Operators didn't compromise awareness with alcohol in unsecure environments. "I should mention," Avery continued, "my team's intelligence officer is here somewhere." "Lieutenant Morrison." Rachel's eyebrow twitched, a tiny facial spasm betraying the crack in her confidence. Avery dipped her chin slightly toward the tree line. Rachel followed her gaze and saw the woman she'd dismissed earlier, cargo pants, black shirt, no makeup, hair pulled back. The woman wasn't mingling, she patrol-scanned in a slow, even rhythm, eyes sweeping corners, exits, potential choke points. Situational awareness, a level Rachel had only seen in movies, their eyes locked. Lieutenant Morrison held Rachel's gaze for exactly 2 seconds, the length required to assess psychological baseline, and then dismissed her with a clean pivot of attention. The dismissal hit harder than anything Avery had said. Rachel felt her heart give a small, irregular jump, one adrenaline spike too fast as her illusion of dominance began collapsing in on itself. This was not how the night was supposed to unfold. She swallowed, throat tight. Jennifer cornered Rachel at the dessert table with a precision that suggested the move was rehearsed. The string quartet played a muted arrangement of Debussy, but Jennifer's voice slipped beneath the melody like a scalpel. Did you know? Her manicured nails clicked against her plate in a restless staccato 1, 2, 3. A nervous tell she'd never managed to hide. About Avery, Rachel didn't look up. She moved petit fours across the silver tray, aligning each one until the geometry felt defensive. Of course not, she said, though the words scraped on the way out. How could I? But she had known something. 3 weeks earlier, while hunting down Avery's address, she had encountered an online void. Not the absence of success she'd hoped for, but the kind of absence that suggested deliberate concealment. A LinkedIn profile at the vaguest possible entry government service. No employment dates, no job description, no social media footprint at all. She'd interpreted that void as failure, the kind you didn't brag about. A life small enough to slip between search algorithms. She hadn't considered the other explanation. Some people didn't need to be seen. Across the lawn, Avery stood at the edge of the pool, the water reflecting faint blue patterns across the front of her uniform. She was speaking to Marcus, the old valedictorian whose intelligence had once been a social shield. His posture leaned forward in a way Rachel recognized instantly. Engagement, almost admiration. The neural resilience training is fascinating, Marcus was saying, pushing his glasses up his nose with a movement that was almost childlike. We're exploring similar frameworks in AI, but the human applications. It's groundbreaking. The mind can be conditioned like any other system, Avery replied. Her gestures were clean, almost surgical, no wasted motion. Pain tolerance, fear modulation, cognitive response under duress. But S tears down everything you think you are, then rebuilds you from the ground up. Before Marcus could respond, Lieutenant Morrison materialized beside Avery like a shift in air pressure. Civilian clothes, hair tied back, eyes sweeping the perimeter with professional detachment. Ma'am. Morrison's voice was quiet but carried authority. Perimeter's green. But we should sync on tomorrow's timeline. Avery inclined her head. Understood. Then to Marcus, excuse me. Rachel intercepted them halfway across the lawn, smile frozen in place, jaw tight enough to ache. Leaving already, her laugh was thin. We haven't even done the slideshow. Avery's expression remained unreadable, which somehow stung more than open disdain. Actually, she said, I'd like to address everyone. If that's all right. Rachel felt something cold under her sternum. A tightening, but she couldn't refuse, not with half the class watching from their cocktail tables. Any sign of hesitation would taste like fear. Of course, she said. Anything you need. 5 minutes later, the patio was packed. The sun had dropped just enough to cast Avery, a silhouette edged with gold, her dress blues catching the last light like polished steel. Conversations tapered off until only the soft hum of cicadas filled the air. Avery scanned the crowd, her face a portrait of controlled respiration, steady inhale, measured exhale. When she began speaking, her voice carried the cadence of someone accustomed to being heard in wine, rain, chaos. When I left this town, she said, I was lost, angry. She didn't raise her voice, but the stillness in her tone drew attention like gravity. I spent for years being told I didn't matter, by people who mattered to me. Her eyes slid to Rachel, no hostility, just recognition. A quiet tally. I joined the Navy to prove something. Mostly to myself. She paused, a muscle near her jaw flexed once before disappearing behind discipline. But S has a 75% attrition rate. During log PT, I fractured my tibia and kept going. During surf torture, my core temperature dropped below 94 degrees. I kept going. Instructors told me I was too small, too weak, too female. She let that last word settle like a challenge. I kept going. Brad, leaning against a column, shifted his weight. His fingers tightened around his beer bottle until the label wrinkled. He remembered the nickname he'd given her their sophomore year, skeleton, and the memory lodged in his throat like grit. I learned something from all of that, Avery said. The people who tried to break me here weren't preparing me for failure. They were rehearsing their own mediocrity. It's easier to tear someone down than to build yourself. Rachel's wine glass trembled. A small vibration, barely noticeable, except that she noticed it. "So thank you," Rachel, Avery said, her tone impossibly calm. "For the invitation, for the reminder of why I left. And why I don't need validation from people who peaked in high school." Silence collapsed over the patio, dense, total, almost physical. Then one clap, Marcus, another, Jennifer. One by one, the sound gathered momentum until the applause rolled across the patio, filling the space with a force that left Rachel exposed at the center of her own event. Her smile stayed fixed, but a tiny muscle under her left eye twitched, betraying the fracture line spreading through her composure. Rachel closed the office door with the kind of precision that came from years of controlling rooms, conversations, and outcomes. The latch clicked softly, too softly for how her pulse hammered against her throat. Outside the window, the reunion unfolded without her, champagne flutes glinting, clusters of former classmates gathered around Avery like planets around a new sun. Someone laughed sharp, admiring, the sound sliced cleanly through her. She moved toward her desk, each step measured, as if any sudden motion would acknowledge how badly her hands were shaking. Her phone lay where she'd left it, screen dark, the weight of it suddenly enormous. She unlocked it with a thumb swipe that wasn't steady, scrolling past names she'd never need again, until she reached the one she'd always kept in reserve. Tyler Mackenzie, second cousin, Seal, a family bragging point she'd exploited during holidays. Never particularly close to her, but close enough to answer. She tapped the name. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Rachel?" Tyler's voice came through low, controlled. It carried the distinct cadence of someone accustomed to receiving bad news at inconvenient hours. "Everything okay?" "Tyler. Hi." Her voice brightened artificially, the effort visible in the slight tightening around her eyes reflected in the window. "I need your help with something," a beat. Then he said, "What kind of something?" His tone sharpened. "Seal vigilance, the kind that rarely softened even with family." He wasn't just listening, he was evaluating. Rachel paced toward the window, watching her own silhouette cut across the glass. "There's a woman here. Claims she's SEAL Team 6. Commander." She arrived at the reunion in a Black Hawk. Tyler didn't react verbally. The silence lengthened. "Waited. I think she's lying," Rachel added, tightening her grip on her phone until her knuckles paled. Another pause. Then, "Name, Avery Campbell." This time the silence altered, no longer neutral, but processing. Rachel could hear faint keyboard clicks on the other end of the line, each one punctuating her spiraling anxiety. "She's real," Tyler said finally. No hesitation now, just fact. "Commander Avery Campbell, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, for combat deployments. Silver Star, to Bronze Stars with Valor devices." His exhale was barely audible. "She's the real deal, Rachel." The words landed like blunt trauma. Rachel swallowed hard, the movement visible in the sharp contraction of her throat. "But why are you asking me this?" Tyler's voice had changed, cool and measured, the warmth of familial courtesy stripped away. "What's your angle?" Her mind raced, pivot, reframe, regain control. "I just..." She forced a strained laugh, eyes flicking over her own tense posture. "I knew her in high school. She was always dramatic. Making up stories, attention-seeking. I was worried she was stolen valor." "She's not," Tyler said. The word struck with the crisp finality of a door shutting. "Is that all?" Rachel inhaled sharply through her nose, masking the stinging flare of humiliation. "Actually," her fingers tightened around the phone. "I was thinking, wouldn't it be funny if someone tested her? Made sure she really knows her stuff. I mean, if she's going to show off." "Rachel," Tyler's tone dropped to register. "A warning. What are you planning?" "Nothing bad," she said quickly, injecting a tone of breezy innocence she didn't feel. "You know how you SEALs are always challenging each other. Those little test script checks, whatever they're called." Her voice softened into something conspiratorial. "Maybe you could come up tomorrow, meet her. Do some of that warrior bonding stuff. I'm hosting brunch." "It would be incredible to have 2 SEALs here." Another long silence, this one colder. "You want me to, what?" Tyler finally said. "Embarrass her?" "No." Rachel pressed her free hand against the desk, grounding herself. "Just verify. Make sure she's not exaggerating. She dropped her voice, letting it tremble just enough to sound intimate, vulnerable. Between us, she was really strange in high school. Loner, lead about stupid things. I'm just trying to protect people from being fooled. She could almost hear it, the shift in his breathing, the pause of someone evaluating doctrine, culture, protocol. SEALs tested each other constantly. Pushed, challenge, she knew that. And she knew Tyler valued the integrity of the teams more than most things. I'll think about it, Tyler said at last. His voice was unreadable. Text me the address. The line went dead. Rachel lowered the phone slowly, her reflection in the dark glass sharpening as her posture straightened. Her shoulders settled into a cold, controlled pose. The earlier panic drained from her face, replaced by something firmer, polished, dangerous. A smile sharp at the edges formed as she turned from the window. It didn't reach her eyes. Sunday morning settled over Connecticut with a deceptive gentleness, clean sunlight through manicured trees, the faint clatter of catering trays being arranged, the kind of quiet suburban luxury Rachel believed she'd mastered. The patio smelled of cinnamon pastries, espresso, and engineered perfection. Her text message blast had gone out at dawn. Surprise guest at brunch, another SEAL. Let's make it memorable. Memorable had a dozen meanings, and Rachel intended every one of them. Tyler arrived precisely at 09:00. Civilian clothes, dark jeans, gray t-shirt, neutral jacket. That nothing about him read civilian. Shoulders squared, gait balanced, eyes doing a constant 180 sweep without conscious effort. Even in the softness of suburbia, he moved like someone who expected contact at any moment. Rachel opened the door with practiced warmth, fingertips brushing his arm as if affection could erase her motives. Thank you so much for coming, she said, voice pitched just right. Everyone's excited to meet you. Tyler gave a small nod, but his eyes were already scanning behind her exits, choke points, unknown faces, potential threats. Even here, his training wrote the rules. He stepped into the crowd. Where is she? Not here yet. Rachel glanced at her watch, though she already knew the minute-by-minute schedule. I told her brunch starts at 10. In reality, she'd orchestrated 30 full minutes for Tyler to work the crowd, establish credibility, seed his presence, take the psychological ground before Avery entered. Tyler moved easily among her guests, posture relaxed but ready, dispensing curated diplomat anecdotes. He used terms like HVI, ISR, perimeter integrity, and each time, the group leaned in closer. He didn't brag, operators rarely did, but the casual presence of authority did the work for him. Rachel watched the shift happen, admiration accumulating around him like static. Exactly as planned, at 09:55, a rental car pulled onto the driveway. Avery stepped out alone. No Lieutenant Morrison this time, her team likely back at base by now. Avery wore jeans and a fitted black shirt, nothing tactical, nothing dramatic. But her presence altered the air the second she crossed the patio threshold. Shoulders loose, awareness sharp, the controlled cadence of her steps unmistakable. Her eyes found Tyler instantly. A brief flick, reading stance, assessing intent, absorbing the battlefield she'd walked into. Avery, Rachel called, bright and falsely surprised. Perfect timing. I want you to meet my cousin Tyler. He's also a SEAL. Team 3. Avery approached, calm, measured, her expression neutral, but something shifted in the subtle tightening around her jaw, recognition of the setup. Tyler, she said. Commander. Tyler's nod was professional, but his posture angled forward, subtle challenge. Rachel says you're DevGru. That's correct. Funny, Tyler said, folding his arms. I don't remember seeing you at the compound. Small community. We tend to know each other. Avery didn't blink. DevGru operators don't typically advertise their movements. Operational security, right? Tyler smiled. It was thin, calculated, so you won't mind a few questions. Professional curiosity. Conversations dimmed around them. Guests slowed, forming an unintentional semicircle. Rachel stood behind Tyler, hands loosely clasped, face the perfect portrait of concerned hostess. Tyler began. What was your bud? S-class number? 367. Instructor Kadri? Master Chief Bronson, SO1 Martinez, SO2 Chen. Tyler nodded. Expression unreadable. Hell week. What happened Thursday night? A micro-twitch near Avery's eye betrayed memory. Cold water, steel pier, bodies shaking. Hypothermia evolutions, steel pier rotations. We lost 3 classmates to doors between midnight and 04:00. What's the course record at the compound? 9:42. Lieutenant Prescott, 2019. Tyler pressed harder. Acronyms, protocols, mission-specific terminology. Rapid-fire questions meant to trap, expose, break rhythm. Avery didn't falter. She answered each with the uncompromising precision of lived experience. No embellishment, no pause, no theatrics. Finally, Tyler's stance shifted, shoulders eased, jaw unclenched. Not admiration exactly, but acknowledgement. Recognition of someone who had walked the same dark ground. You're solid, he said quietly. I know, Avery's voice carried steel. Did you enjoy the interrogation? A flicker of guilt crossed Tyler's face. Barely a fraction of a second, Rachel said. I know what Rachel said. Avery turned her full attention on her. Did you think I wouldn't recognize a setup? Rachel's lips held their shape, but something in her face tightened around the eyes, the edge of her smile. I just wanted Tyler to meet you, to heroes. Interesting, Avery murmured. She pulled her phone from her pocket and tapped the screen. Because last night, NCIS called me. Someone reported potential stolen valor. Anonymous tip originated from this address. Color drained from Rachel's face in a slow, creeping wash. I don't know. Lying to federal investigators is a felony, Avery continued. Filing a false report is another. The agent seemed very interested in who might want to damage a SEAL commander's reputation. Silence fell across the patio, heavy, inescapable. Tyler turned toward Rachel, confusion shifting into realization. You used me. No, I'm done here, he said. No anger, just flat disappointment. He faced Avery. Ma'am. My apologies, this was unprofessional, understood. Avery's tone held no malice, but no forgiveness either. Choose your allies more carefully. Tyler left without another word. Guests peeled away in quick, awkward exits. Sudden emergencies, early meetings, excuses mumbled as they fled the blast radius. Within 20 minutes, only two remained, Rachel, clutching the back of a chair with white knuckles, and Avery, standing in steady sunlight. You turned to everyone against me, Rachel whispered, voice thin. No. Avery's reply was soft, precise. You did that yourself. 20 years ago, and again today. She walked away, quiet footsteps on stone, calm, unhurried. Rachel stood among the empty champagne flutes, the ruins of her social choreography, her pulse hammering like trapped thunder. Her rage cooled, condensed, hardened. This time, she wasn't planning a scene. She was planning a strike, something without witnesses. Monday bled into existence with the kind of muted gray light that made everything look colder than it was. Rachel sat rigid in her home office, shoulders locked, jaw clenched so tightly a faint tremor pulsed along the hinge of her jaw. The glow of her laptop reflected in her eyes, sharp, predatory, calculating. 3 hours of digging. 3 hours of leaning so close to the screen her breath fogged the bottom edge of the glass. Browser tabs stretched across the monitor like a tactical bore. Hotel registries, flight manifests, rental agency receipts, military protocol articles she barely understood but pretended to. She'd found Avery's hotel high security, business class, predictable. She'd found Avery's rental car government grade, black SUV. She'd found Avery's flight Tuesday evening, Norfolk bound, a clean return to her domain. But what mattered most was the discovery sitting in a separate tab, highlighted, bookmarked, reopened a dozen times. Naval Special Warfare Development Group whistleblower channel, anonymous reporting for misconduct. Her pulse quickened. She curled her fingers once, cracking the knuckles with a quiet, deliberate flex. Avery had humiliated her publicly, dismantled years of carefully manufactured hierarchy. But institutions, especially military ones, were vulnerable to doubt. Bureaucracies lived in fear of scandal. Rachel's fingers hovered over the keyboard. The first keystroke came with a sharp exhale. Commander exhibited reckless conduct during a civilian event. Another line. Possible misuse of military rotary wing aircraft for personal image enhancement. Another. casual dissemination of operational methodologies to embedded civilians. She crafted each allegation with surgical precision, never too dramatic, never too obvious. Just enough jargon to sound like someone familiar with protocol, not enough to raise suspicion that she'd copied it from Google. She could already see it. Investigations, internal audits, Avery dragged into administrative limbo. Deaths by paperwork. Her index finger hovered over submit, trembling slightly. She steadied it with her other hand, breath held. Her phone rang. The vibration rattled against the edge of her glass desk, sharp enough to jolt her spine. She answered. "Hello, Mrs. Brennan." The voice was female, clipped, trained, no wasted syllables. "This is Special Agent Linda Torres, Naval Criminal Investigative Service." A thin flash of panic flicked behind Rachel's eyes. "We need to discuss your report from Saturday." A breath caught in Rachel's throat, audible enough she pressed her lips together to hide it. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Ma'am," Torres said, tone unchanged, "filing false statements to federal authorities is a felony under Title 18. We've concluded our preliminary review of Commander Avery Campbell. She is fully cleared of wrongdoing." Rachel's fingers tightened around the phone, knuckles whitening. "Additionally," Torres continued, "we traced the source of the report to your device. We need you to appear at our Hartford field office tomorrow at 09:00 for a recorded interview. You may bring legal counsel." Click. The call ended without ceremony. Rachel stared at the dead screen, chest rising in small, shallow increments. A pulse hammered above her left eyebrow, a small, involuntary twitch she couldn't control. Avery had turned the system back on her, cleanly, quietly, like someone trained to neutralize threats without raising alarms. She snapped her laptop open again, fingers flying with frantic precision. She needed something, anything to regain ground, to strike back. The search results refreshed, endless news links falling into place. Then something caught her eye, a small regional publication. 3 months old. Headline: SEAL Team under review after unauthorized action in Syria. Civilian casualties reported. Rachel leaned in, breath tightening. The article was vague, the kind of vague that screamed classified material hiding behind redaction. But the timeline she checked, Avery's known deployments, cross-referencing dates with obsessive intensity, fit perfectly. Avery had been overseas during that window. Rachel felt something glacial and electric spread across her chest, not fear. Opportunity. If there were whispers of misconduct, real or speculative, she could amplify them. Not allegations this time, not gossip, a story. Her hand moved with renewed purpose as she reached for her phone, not trembling, now steady, surgical. She scrolled to a name she'd saved months ago after a charity gala where she donated an obscene amount to get favorable press coverage. Jonathan Marks, investigative reporter. The type who salivated over stories involving shadow wars and special operations secrecy. She pressed call. He answered on the second ring. "Rachel, been a while." Her voice emerged smooth, composed, the voice she used when closing large checks or crafting polite threats. "Jonathan, I have something that might interest you. Something about SEAL Team 6 and an unauthorized operation." A long silence followed. Then Jonathan exhaled slowly. "I'm listening." Rachel allowed herself the smallest smile, thin, taut, predatory. "Good," she said, "because this one has teeth." Jonathan Pierce arrived just after 09:00, stepping into Rachel's foyer with the smooth gait of a man accustomed to entering strangers' homes and walking out with their lights on paper. He carried a slim leather satchel, worn at the edges, the kind reporters kept even after they were successful, sacred tools of a profession built on implication and extraction. He followed Rachel to her office, his eyes scanning the environment with quiet assessment. Not judgment calculation, the kind that measured whether a space belonged to someone who lied well. He sat, crossing one ankle over the other, placing a compact digital recorder on the table. The soft click of the power button echoed in the room. "So," he began, voice low, unhurried, "you're alleging Commander Avery Campbell participated in an unauthorized kinetic action." His pen tapped once against his thumb, subtle, rhythmic. "You understand how serious that is?" Rachel leaned back just enough to signal confidence. "I'm not alleging anything, I'm presenting facts." She swept her hand across printouts arranged with forensic precision: deployment logs, news clippings, redacted reports. Her last deployment overlaps with the incident. Days, not weeks, that's not coincidence. Jonathan skimmed the documents. His brow tightened by a millimeter, small enough that most people would miss it. He didn't. Rachel didn't either. This, he said, tapping a redacted article with the blunt end of his pen, is circumstantial. Then make it more, Rachel replied, her voice dropped half an octave, measured, deliberate. You're an investigative journalist. Investigate. He didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he adjusted his glasses, a micro shift to buy time, while he assessed her motives. You realize if this is false, if you push me in a direction without evidence, you expose yourself to significant liability. And my publisher loses patience for lawsuits. If it's false, why did the military bury it? Rachel leaned forward, hands clasping together, knuckles whitening. A decorated SEAL commander pulled from combat ops and shoved into P.O. rotations? That's not a promotion. That's containment. Jonathan paused, his pen hovering over the page. Containment, 'tis your word. Fine. Reassignment due to operational review. Whatever term they use. Rachel's smile flickered. Thin and brittle, but you know this. Commanders at her level don't get sidelined without a reason. He was silent again, eyes lowering to the documents. She could feel the shift in him, interest sharpening, caution warring with curiosity. I'll need more than matching dates, he finally murmured. I can get you more. Rachel swiveled her laptop toward him, pulling up screenshots of the whistleblower portal. If someone filed an anonymous report, something outlining concerns about judgment, protocol breaches, that would justify deeper inquiry, wouldn't it? Jonathan's pen stilled. You're suggesting fabricating evidence. I'm suggesting creating visibility. Rachel held his gaze, expression steady. The truth is buried under classified restrictions. I'm just giving it air. He didn't agree. But he didn't walk out either. 90 minutes later, he left with a curated folder, documents selected not for truth, but for narrative potential. Rachel watched the way he held them, fingers pressing slightly harder than necessary. That was the grip of a man who smelled a story. 30 minutes after his departure, she filed the report. VPN chained, burner email. Language mimicking internal phrasing, operational overreach, civilian risk exposure, compromised mission protocols. Detailed, specific, credible enough to trigger a review. By Thursday morning, the article hit. Decorated SEAL commander under investigation. Did hero cross the line? Jonathan had crafted it with surgical neutrality. No accusations, just questions shaped like blades. No claims, just patterns that implied guilt. No proof, just enough smoke to suggest fire. Within hours, it spread. People didn't want truth, they wanted spectacle. Rachel watched the comments scroll, words like murderer, liar, cover-up. Digital torches, digital pitchforks, strangers dissecting Avery's life with the confidence of experts who'd never seen a battlefield. Her phone vibrated. Tyler, she answered with a breath already primed for defensiveness. What did you do? His voice came low, strained, each syllable clipped like someone holding back more than anger. I told the truth, she replied, adjusting her posture. If Avery has nothing to hide, do you understand what that article triggers? Tyler's breathing grew tighter, the kind that strained against discipline. Do you understand what happens when an operator's judgment is questioned publicly? She becomes a liability to her team, to mission integrity, to national security. Rachel's jaw twitched. I did nothing illegal. No, Tyler said, voice turning cold, flat, lethal in its calm. You did something far worse. You attacked the integrity of a SEAL officer because your ego couldn't handle being irrelevant. Her throat constricted. Tyler, we're done. Rachel, don't contact me again. The call ended with a quiet finality more brutal than shouting. Rachel stared at the article again. Viral, trending, a wildfire. She poured wine. 10 a.m. hands steady. She lifted the glass to her reflection in the window. Dark circles under her eyes, hair immaculate, expression triumphant. A knock sliced through the moment, not frantic, not hesitant. A single, precise press of the doorbell. She froze, glass halfway to her lips. Someone was here. The door opened on the first knock, the sound still vibrating in the frame as Rachel pulled it wider. The morning light spilled across her floor, catching the dust motes suspended in the air. Two silhouettes stood on her porch, dark suits, rigid posture, the unmistakable bearing of federal authority. Mrs. Brennan, the taller one, stepped forward, badge already displayed between two steady fingers. Sultan pepper hair, expression carved from stone. Special Agent Matthews, NCIS. He tilted his head slightly toward the woman beside him. Special Agent Chen, we need to speak with you. Rachel's grip on her wine glass tightened until her knuckles blanched. A thin tremor flickered across her wrist. I've told you everything I know. This isn't regarding your previous false report, Matthews said, his tone clipped, clinical. He moved one step inside her threshold, and Rachel instinctively shifted back, the way prey retreats, without realizing it's doing so. This is about the anonymous whistleblower complaint filed Tuesday evening concerning Commander Campbell, and its connection to the Hartford Journal article. Her breath caught. A faint, involuntary twitch pulsed beneath her left eye. I don't know, Mrs. Brennan, Chen said, voice calm enough to feel like a scalpel. We traced the VPN chain, the burner email, the proxy servers. She tapped a slender tablet against her palm. Every route leads back here, to your house, to your devices. The wine glass in Rachel's hand quivered, the surface of the liquid rippling in tiny concentric circles. Lots of people call journalists. 17 calls in 72 hours, Matthews interrupted. And filing fabricated reports with federal entities is a felony. Also, he swiped across his tablet, the screen illuminating his face. Lying to federal agents is a separate felony. Attempting to sabotage the career of a military officer through false allegations? Enjoying this list, or would you prefer bullet points? Rachel's throat constricted. Her carefully built posture, the straight spine, the lifted chin collapsed by degrees. One vertebra at a time, Chen stepped farther into the fore, her movements precise, economical. We review every claim in your whistleblower submission. Every detail was either incorrect or intentionally manipulated. The Syria incident you referenced. Wrong unit, wrong commander, wrong timeline. Matthews continued, voice flat. Commander Campbell has no reprimands, no operational misconduct. Her file reads cleaner than most officers twice her seniority. I was concerned. Rachel's voice cracked. You were vindictive, Matthews corrected, a fractional narrowing of his eyes underscoring the finality of the assessment. We interviewed several of your former classmates. Lieutenant Morrison provided testimony. Your cousin Tyler Mackenzie gave a sworn statement. His jaw flexed. We know exactly what motivated your behavior. Something inside Rachel gave out, her knees softened, and she sank into a chair, fingers still clutching the wine glass like a lifeline. Matthews exhaled once, slow, controlled. Here's what happens next. Commander Campbell is well within her rights to press charges, federal charges. We're talking defamation, obstruction, malicious filing of false reports. Minimum 6 months, maximum 5 years. Rachel's breath quickened, short pulls of air that barely reached her lungs. Chen set a folder on the table, sliding it toward her. Or you can accept a plea agreement, full retraction, written apology, formal cooperation in our investigation into Mr. Pierce. She held Rachel's eyes. And a permanent restraining order preventing you from contacting or approaching Commander Campbell. Rachel's voice barely rose above a whisper. And if I don't sign? Matthews didn't hesitate. Then prosecution moves forward, without leniency. Rachel looked between the agents, their stances unyielding, their expressions detached. She had once believed she controlled the narrative-shaped perception, manipulated outcomes. But Avery had countered every move, methodically, quietly, professionally. A SEAL commander dismantling a civilian opponent with precision. I'll take the plea. Smart, Chen murmured. She tapped the folder. Have your attorney review it if you'd like, but the offer expires at 1700 hours. They departed without ceremony, leaving the house colder than when they arrived. Rachel sat motionless, surrounded by curated decor, crystal vases, polished wood, framed degrees. Everything that once signaled success now looked like props on a set built for someone else's story. Her phone buzzed. Email from the Hartford Journal. Your comments have been removed due to terms of service violations. Your account has been permanently suspended. Another vibration. Jennifer, I can't believe you did this. Don't contact me again. More messages, each one a polite severing of ties. Former friends, former allies, abandoning her with the efficiency of people distancing themselves from toxic fallout. By evening, her attorney had reviewed the plea. His disappointment radiated through every exhale, every shake of his head. She signed anyway. By midnight, her retraction was live on every platform she'd used to spread her accusations. And the glass of wine beside her, one celebratory, now tasted metallic, bitter, a reminder of the empire she built on spite and watched collapse in a single day. The digital fallout spread through Hartford like smoke after an explosion, slow at first, then impossible to contain. By Friday afternoon, the Hartford Journal printed its retraction on page 1, above the fold, the ink still sharp enough to sting. The board-ordered apology named the failures plainly: insufficient verification, reckless sourcing, compromised editorial oversight. Jonathan Pierce's photograph appeared beside the statement, his smile long gone. His editor, usually a man of polished ambiguity, now delivered clipped public remarks about breaches of professional ethics and pending internal review. The newsroom buzzed with the restless guilt of people who suddenly remembered due diligence. Rachel saw all of it. She sat hunched at her desk, the home office once her curated sanctuary, white oak, frosted glass, the slow hum of a designer diffuser now suffocating. Her monitor glowed with locked social accounts, grayed out comment sections, notifications frozen mid-collapse. Her finger hovered uselessly over the mouse. A twitch pulled at her left eyelid every few seconds, a betraying pulse she couldn't control. On the desk in front of her lay the restraining order, its legal jargon stark and cold. Minimum distance, 500 yards from Commander Avery Campbell. No communication, direct or indirect, violations will result in immediate arrest. The embossed seal caught the afternoon light, projecting a thin crescent of gold onto her knuckles. She hadn't realized she was clutching the edge of the paper until her fingers, numb. The doorbell rang again. Her head jerked up. The tick under her eye tightened. She moved to the floor with careful steps, shoulders pulled taut, her breath barely clearing her chest. Through the peephole livery. No uniform, no tactical gear. Civilian clothing, dark and simple, the posture unmistakably military even without insignia. Feet planted, hands visible, expression unreadable, carved into neutrality. Rachel cracked the door just enough to show her face. "You're violating the restraining order." Avery didn't flinch. Her voice carried that quiet, disciplined steel Rachel remembered from the reunion. Controlled decibels, controlled posture, controlled everything. "The order prevents you from contacting me." A pause, almost microscopic. "I came to tell you something." Curiosity flickered across Rachel's features, subtle, but it overrode the instinct to close the door. She pulled it open another 6 inches. "What?" "The Syria incident you tried to connect to me." Avery's breath left her evenly, no tremor, no hesitation. "That was real. Different unit, like the agents said, but real. 3 civilians died in that operation, women and children." A microscopic tightening at the corner of her mouth, pain preserved, not performed. "I know," Avery continued, "because I was the one who filed the original report. I testified against my commanding officer. I put my career on the line and someone else crossed it." Rachel's breath hitched, not aghast, just the sharp intake of someone whose worldview had cracked at the edges. "That's why I was rotated stateside," Avery said. "Not punishment, protection. My testimony put dangerous people behind razor wire. Their allies wanted payback. So the Navy moved me to recruiting and community liaison roles while threat assessment teams did their work." A beat of silence. Rachel's hand clenched around the doorframe. "Why are you telling me this?" Her voice came out thinner than she intended. Avery's gaze softened only by degrees, the way a practiced operator allows vulnerability without surrender. "Because you carried the same cruelty you learned in high school. You never grew past who you were at 17. Her throat moved once, a small swallow. "And I want you to understand something. Pity isn't the same as forgiveness." "I don't want your pity." "Good." Avery stepped back from the doorway. "Because you won't get it." She turned, then paused, glancing over her shoulder. "I spent years wondering why you hated me, why you needed to dismantle me. I finally realized you didn't. You just needed someone to feel smaller, so you could feel bigger. That's the saddest thing I've ever encountered. No anger, no triumph, just a flat, precise truth. Avery walked to her car with the quiet confidence of someone who has nothing left to fear from the target of their past. Rachel stood frozen in the doorway, the cool draft brushing the edges of the restraining order still in her hand. Hours later, the house was cloaked in darkness. When Derek came home, he flipped on the hallway light and saw her silhouette on the living room sofa, shoulders collapsed inward. The plea agreement lay open on the coffee table, pages fanned like a surrender flag. The partners want to distance the firm from the controversy, he said, voice slow but not tender. His tie was loosened, his posture that of a man navigating liability. They're asking me to remove you from our social events, client dinners, corporate functions. She lifted her eyes to him, red-rimmed, dry, distant. His expression held no flicker of worrying, only strategic assessment. They're afraid I'll embarrass you, she asked. They're afraid you'll embarrass the company. His jaw shifted, not with sympathy but calculation. I told them it was temporary. That you've made a mistake, but you were handling it. And if I'm not, her voice cracked on the second word. Derek hesitated just long enough to reveal the truth. Then we'll need to discuss our options. He walked upstairs, each step measured, leaving Rachel sitting alone as the house seemed to stretch around her large, expensive, hollow. Furniture silhouettes leaned against the walls like silent witnesses. Shadows clung to corners, elongated and heavy, as if the structure itself was whispering judgment. At 17, she had believed she was untouchable. At 35, she finally understood she had never been anything more than replaceable. 3 months later, the therapy office smelled faintly of antiseptic wipes and old paper neutral, intentionally so, a space designed to keep emotions contained rather than provoked. Rachel sat rigidly on the suede sofa, her posture too upright for comfort, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles blanched. Session 8. Court mandated. Compliance documented. Dr. Morrison observed her with professional stillness, pen posed over a yellow legal pad. He had the same calm affect as someone reading an ECG, no judgment, only interpretation. Rachel spoke in slow, measured breaths, recounting the reunion, the collapse that followed, the unraveling of her carefully curated life. Every now and then her jaw tightened, a defensive reflex she hadn't yet unlearned. What did you want from Avery? He asked, not looking up from his notes. Rachel's eyes flickered, as if the question had hit a bruise she wasn't used to answering cleanly. Years of reflexive deflection had left her rusty, a breath caught halfway up her throat. She forced it down. Validation, I guess. Her voice was low, proof that I'd made the right choices. That being popular in high school meant something. And now, Rachel's fingers twitched before she answered. Now I realize it meant nothing. A long blink, her lashes up but no tears falling. I peaked at 17 and spent 20 years defending a throne that never existed. Dr. Morrison wrote something 3 short strokes, then a longer one. Diagnostic shorthand she couldn't decipher. What would you say to Avery if you could? I can't, she reminded. The words automatic. Restraining order, hypothetically. She stared at the patterned carpet for several seconds, throat tightening, eyes unfocused as if replaying archived footage. When she finally spoke, it came out quieter than before. I'd say I'm sorry, not because I have to be, but because I am. Her fingers released and curled again, a microspasm of regret. I'd tell her that watching her succeed made me confront every choice I'd made, every opportunity I wasted being cruel instead of kind. And that scared me more than anything she could have said or done. Dr. Morrison nodded once, a small, satisfied pivot of his chin. That's progress. Far away, across state lines and a different world entirely, Avery stood in the DVGRU compound briefing room in Virginia Beach. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, reflecting off the tactical displays showing mission parameters, satellite coordinates, target schematics, predicted threat vectors. She studied them with the focused detachment of someone trained to compartmentalize. Her breathing was even, her shoulders squared, not a single emotion leaking through micro-expression or posture. Lieutenant Morrison stepped alongside her, holding a secure tablet. Ma'am, the NCIS case is officially closed. Full exoneration in the record. The journalist lost his position. Rachel Brennan, is in therapy and under court supervision. Avery's jaw moved once in acknowledgement. Good. Did you want to pursue additional charges? Her counsel said. No. Avery turned from the screens, the movement controlled, efficient. I don't need her punished. I need her irrelevant. She checked her watch. Mission brief in 30 minutes, weapons inspection at 1800, team readiness evaluation at 0600 tomorrow. In another state, someone was dissecting the consequences of her own actions. Here, none of that mattered. The compound had its own gravity, its own hierarchy of significance. Adversaries came in the form of high-value targets and strategic intel, not old wounds from a high school cafeteria. Her inbox held messages from the past 3 months. Pratt had sent a long, carefully curated apology email full of qualifiers, self-justifications, and hindsight wisdom. Avery read it once, expression unreadable, then deleted it without archiving. Jennifer's Facebook request sat ignore, a digital knock she would never answer. Marcus had forwarded her a research article about neural resilience training with a short note. Thought you'd appreciate this. Avery responded to Marcus, only to him. She knew exactly which people deserved a second chance and which did not. 6 months after the reunion, Avery sat in a quiet coffee shop near the base, reviewing mission reports on a tablet. Her posture was straight, attention split between the report's tactical data and the ambient shifts in the room, the instinctive situational awareness of someone who'd spent years in hostile environments. A woman approached hesitantly, hands wrapped tightly around a paper cup. Not Rachel, but Derek's sister Claire. Avery recognized her vaguely from high school, same sharp jawline, same eyes that always looked like they were waiting for permission to speak. Commander Campbell. Claire's voice trembled slightly. I'm Claire, Derek Brennan's sister. I wanted to apologize for how my brother and his wife treated you. For how we all treated you back then. Avery lifted her gaze slowly, assessing. No hostility, no threat posture, just discomfort layered over guilt. You weren't the worst of them, she said. I was complicit, Claire exhaled, a shaky release. That's almost worse. She sat without waiting for permission, a gesture that made Avery's left eyebrow lift by a fraction. Rachel and Derek are separating. The scandal, the fees, the partners pulling back, it broke something. That's unfortunate, Avery said. Tone neutral, is it? Claire asked, her head tilting with genuine curiosity. She destroyed herself trying to destroy you, isn't that justice? Avery paused, thinking of operations where justice was never clean, never cinematic, never satisfying. Of choices made in deserts, in safe houses, in rooms lit only by threat assessment screens. Justice is overrated, she said finally. Success is better revenge. She returned her attention to the tablet. Claire lingered in uncomfortable silence before leaving, footsteps soft against the tile. Outside, the Virginia sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ocean, shadows indifferent to past humiliations or adolescent hierarchies. Avery finished her report, slipped the tablet into her pack, and headed back toward the compound. Some battles demanded engagement, some demanded restraint. And knowing the difference was the mark of someone who had truly earned the title of warrior. The nerd had become unstoppable, the popular girl had become a cautionary tale. And Avery's indifference was the final victory. If you're enjoying this story and want more narratives with the same intensity and realism, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.